Okay, y'all, it's after 5 o'clock, so let's get started. I am going to record this and post it because a lot of people are asking that they couldn't be here, but I recorded, and Dr. West has been gracious enough to let me do that, so I'll sit up here and handle that. Then I'll post it on the Historical Society Facebook page is what I'll do. You're in for a treat, there's just no doubt about it, because, number one, don't you like my banner behind the podium up there? That's our bicentennial banner that we've been working on, and a lot of work's gone into the bicentennial, and we got a lot more to do. We spent last week at the fair. Next Saturday, we're going to be at New Bern for the Depot Days. We got an event up in Trimble coming up, and then the weekend of October 13, 14, 15, and 16 of the big weekend of the bicentennial culminating activity. We invited the governor, and we're doing all kinds of stuff, trying to have a good time in celebrating Dyer County's 200th birthday. Today, you're in for a treat because Dr. Van West from MTSU has agreed to come. He's a very busy man. He's all over the country doing this kind of work. And we contacted him a while back, and he's agreed to be here on this date. And I appreciate you spending time coming here because he's done a lot of work in Dyer County, especially in terms of National Register of Historic Places that are available. And he was looking on his phone a while ago, and I was pleased when he said, you know, Bruce High School is already listed on the webpage. It's already up that you guys are on the National Register. So all that work that they were doing to get that, make it happen, that's pretty recent. Other areas in the county that are on the National Register are, of course, the Court Square area, the entire thing down there, Oak Street up here, and Gordon. Yeah. And then the Pleasant Hill Cemetery just north of Finley is listed, as well as the New Bern Depot. And I think you probably already know that the Bicentennial Committee is working with the State Historic Commission to mount 3 additional historic markers in Dyer County during our bicentennial. So we're in the middle of doing all that, and that's going to be a big thing too. So I could go on and on, but thank you for being here. And without further ado, please welcome Dr. Van West from MTSU.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming out on what ends up being a nice day. It's nice here now in September. We're getting sort of some good temperatures and decent weather after, there was some times there in the first part of August. I thought I was living in Texas already. What I wanted to, when Danny asked me to do this about a year ago, I thought, okay, let me just sort of take you back on memory lane. This is what I found in Dyersburg the first time I came here in my position at the Center for Historic Preservation in December of 1988. Now, I had come at the invite of Sammy Dietrich. Don't know if any of you remember her. She was the head of the Chamber of Commerce back in that time. So I know she went on and worked in state government after that. But Sammy had heard me speak at a meeting, and it was about historic preservation, heritage tourism, the different avenues that you can take. And she was like, you know, could you come up to Dyersburg and sort of tell me what you think? So these are some views from that time, from 1988. Now, the Latta House on Troy Avenue was already listed in the National Register. And the First State Bank in Dyersburg, there on the corner of the square, was already listed. And the King House listing was underway, and it would be in the National Register by 1990. And in fact, I looked over the nomination and sort of gave them some pointers on what they might want to do. So those pieces were in place. But at Sammy's invitation, I started to put together a plan and then a group of graduate students to come in 1990, because I thought the square had lots of potential. Here's one section of the square in 1988, the old Forked Deer hardware store front, city drug front. You can see the Christmas decorations. Knowing me, I probably came between semesters. The school year at MTSU, they shut down after finals in like December the 10th. So I probably came between that and Christmas holidays. So we come back a year later, and Sammy had worked a lot with Mayor Bill Revelle. And those two guys met with the students and sort of talked about what they had gained from their own constituencies, working with downtown business owners, different county and city officials, property owners, of what they wanted to accomplish and what they thought was possible. And then for my guys to go in there and do the research and develop a National Register nomination for the town square. Now, this was something I very much wanted to do because I was sort of aggravated. Not at anyone here, I was aggravated at people in the state. When I came to the Center for Historic Preservation, that was in 1985. And the very first project I launched that year took up most of my time for the next 3-4 years, the Tennessee Century Farms program. There's Century Farms in this county. There's over 2,200 of them today. And we did a traveling exhibit. I did a Century Farms book. So, spent a lot of time in rural Tennessee. And in talking to different state officials, they spoke out of ignorance because they would always say, well, there's really nothing in West Tennessee. There's nothing over there really eligible for the National Register. Those are towns you just drive through and you can see that there's nothing there. Well, I came to Tennessee from Montana. I'd been working there for several years. And Montana is nothing but railroad towns. So I love railroad towns. And I took on the challenge of showing that they were wrong by picking up the Illinois Central Railroad towns here in West Tennessee. Dyersburg was the first. I would eventually do Covington and then Union City. And hundreds of buildings put on the National Register of Historic Places in a region where there was, quote, nothing. So, some of this was, I wanted to show the state, get out in the counties, get out in the communities and learn. You need to learn a lot of things, and my students needed to learn. So that's always been how I've done projects. I take my students out, and everyone here was more than gracious. In fact, the students got a big kick out of it. Somebody from the Star Gazette came and interviewed them on the square. It was like, whoa. And the mayor was great, the chamber was great, everyone was just welcoming. And we started on the work. Now, the courthouse square area was approved in 1991. That sort of knocked me back as I was preparing this. It's like, that's 32 years ago. But then what a foundation y'all have taken. I came back in 2010 to actually do a program here. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And, took a series of photos of how things had been restored and improved, the new sidewalks, everything around the town square, 20 years after the nomination, basically, in 2010. And today I got into town a bit early so I could walk around the square in the downtown and still see how so much of that is in place. So these are views of the town square from 2010. You guys have done a great job on these buildings, keeping, a lively part of the town. There's new developments taking place. And, you're just a model of what towns do with National Register historic districts. You do a great job. So, of course you can see some kinds, paint colors change and things like that change. But it's pretty interesting. City drugs, of course, has changed quite a bit from 2010. The courthouse is still, I see y'all do a great job with the courthouse grounds. I like all of the interpretive markers that are up there now. They weren't there 30 years ago, but I think that helps to tell the story of the county. So good stuff. And of course, the Greyhound bus depot, the sort of Art Deco marvel that you didn't expect to find in Dyersburg. The students loved this, not for its architecture, because they could get Domino's pizza. And of course, now I know that's been restored as the bus stop cafe. But you know, this was right after, in 1988, it had become the pizza place. And then here's a photo from 2010 when it was still the pizza place. So, you know, again, I like to see how people take the old buildings and adapt them and change them and still keep them in use and still keep them as landmarks within the town. Now, we focused on the downtown first because that was really what people here wanted. They wanted the square addressed. So then we had different neighborhoods, two different ones wanted to be looked at too. The Oak and Gordon Street area, there between Sampson and Troy. And these are photos from 1992. Of course, here's a photo from 2010. I went by this house today. It's been painted again. It's a little bit different, but it's, you know, still, I love it. It's one of these bungalows with a sort of classical front to it. Real different than so many of those house types are. This is the more typical bungalow. And again, those two neighborhoods are still real solid. And people seem to take pride in their homes and being in that neighborhood. Troy Avenue had the Latta House, but you know, there was other sort of landmark homes, particularly on the part that has the double drive with the boulevard effect. Now, you know, this was pretty breathtaking for Dyersburg to take on in the early 20th century, because you know, most railroad towns just have a linear plan and everything is sort of the same, but this divided medium with the sidewalk, you know, really opened that up. And I was enthralled by Troy Avenue 30 years ago. I've noticed that the Arts and Crafts house there on the left now is for sale. I have to admit, I did look at what the price was. And you know, it's got then the Craftsman Foursquare and then the Mediterranean Revival House. Very similar to the architectural style of First Methodist Church. So, you know, landmark houses there. And, you know, when I came back in 2010, I wanted to see how that district had held up. Of course, it's held up perfectly, looks great today. And these are some shots again from 2010. And, you know, the only thing different from today is, well, you know, I took these obviously in the winter because the foliage is down. Can't quite see the roof line of the Mediterranean house today. So, you know, these have been, I think, real foundational infrastructure for your heritage program. And I was real proud of what we did in Dyersburg, real proud of what the community, how they responded and have done so ever since. Because this is not true in all of the work that we have done over my years. You go back to some places and they're gone. Community maybe valued them for 10 years or a generation, but here you're going on to 2 generations and not long till a third, and you know, things are looking good. So our next project was Mayor Riddens up in Newbern called me up. Well, he'd heard from Mayor Ravel all of this good stuff in Dyersburg. Well, why can't Newbern get some of that? And he was particularly interested in the depot because he really wanted to have Newbern as a stop on the Illinois Central. And the depot he saw as a real key part of that. So could this be listed in the National Register? Could it be restored? And these are the photos that I took in 1992. The nomination was approved the following year. And then Mayor Mabry invited me up to see the building. This is it in 1994 after it was restored. So again, 93 to 94, they did that. It's been a stop. And I'll come back to Mayor Mabry. I thought I had that slide next and I don't. So let me just wrap up with that first group of projects that we did. the Depot in New Bern, the 3 historic districts in Dyersburg. You guys should take great pride in how you help to elevate these students' education and career advancement. This is why we do these projects, not just for your communities, but also to train that next generation. So these are the students, and this is what they ended up doing. One is now the Dean of Libraries at Georgia Tech. She makes a whole lot more money than I do. The other was the head of the National Register Program in the state of North Carolina. Another one was the city preservationist for Austin, Texas. Another one, assistant director at the East Tennessee Historical Society in Knoxville. Another one's a curator at Travelers Rest Museum in Nashville. The director of the Georgia Agricultural Museum. And then the smart one became the computer geek, the systems administrator for Columbus State Community College in Ohio. So, you know, they still talk to me about the Dyersburg project. What's happening? What do you know about Dyersburg? We so enjoyed that. So again, your partnership with us, you know, look at what these guys have done. This is what you mean by passing it on. Now for me, I was working at this, that went a little bit too fast, and I'm not real sure. I think I can do that. There we go. At this time, also in the early 90s, UT Press has asked me to put together a book about the state. So again, wanting to show those who thought they knew, I included photos of the New Bern Depot and the Dyer County Courthouse, and included long histories of Covington, Dyersburg, and Union City. Again, these places that they didn't know anything about in Nashville or Knoxville, and then they did. They learned. Now, after that, it's 10 years till I come back to Dyer County. And this is where we took on a project to document what's on the other side of the levee, as I would tell everyone, what's on the west side of the levee in West Tennessee. This is one of the shots I took. It was late in the day, and it is still one of my favorite shots of rural Tennessee, and it was here in Dyer County. Of course, we found the Bogota Community Center, and that is still a real going concern. It was sort of brand new 15 years ago, but they're doing a great job. We went down Heloise Road, and I know my 2 graduate students who were with me, they just couldn't get over the Heloise landing. That barges could be right there. In fact, that barge ended up, because they were young women, these 2 students, the barge stopped and guys got off the barge to talk to the young women. You know? So, and they said, well, you know, that we never thought we would get hit on at a ferry landing in rural West Tennessee. I said, well, welcome to Tennessee, kids. You know, there were still some tenant houses through that road. Chick Road was a favorite little drive, because I always talked about, well, this Church of God here on Chick Road is, I guess, maybe the westernmost church in the state, because again, it's on the west side of the levee. Don't know if it's still there. I haven't been on this little drive through 2005.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
But it gave me a real appreciation for the agricultural history of Dyer County, that project. And we went from Tiptonville all the way down to Memphis to do this survey. And here's the mouth of the Obion River, which I always thought was an important place in this county's and region's history. Now, 2010, I'm back for a workshop here, and it's with a program that we have partnered with the Library of Congress now since 2008. So it's a 15-year-old program called Teaching with Primary Sources. And I took photos of this old church over near the cemetery because I have this great interest in churches, and really I haven't done much with the churches in Dyersburg except for First Methodist. So I thought, okay, I'm filing this away. This is one I want to research on at a later date. because of this sort of interest I have in churches. But we came and did a workshop here, and this is my photos from 2010, and it was for teacher development. I mean, this is the Professional Development Center, and my staff that does our PD for teachers, they weren't real sure about going to Dyersburg. So I sort of like, okay, I'll take you to Dyersburg. I like Dyersburg. And you can tell I also took some other photos in 2010. I enjoyed coming back and seeing, again, what a good job folks were doing here with their historic buildings. And this is, then clued me in though, what didn't I look at in the early 90s? I didn't look at schools. So I got suddenly interested in schools with this one in 2010. And of course, this is before it was the museum. You guys have done a great job using some of the classrooms for museums. That's a real improvement. But then school suddenly got on my mind. And of course, that I know the rules of segregation. This was the segregated white school built by the WPA in 1939. That's what the WPA did. They would build a school for whites. Often they would build one for blacks. Well, I started to look for where is that historic black school in Dyersburg. But before I got to that project, there was the Welcome Center, the Dyersburg Welcome Center, and the Civil War exhibit. Now, I came to this dedication in 2014, and I was again real pleased to point out to all of the visitors, there is a Civil War history along the river and in these counties against the river that often gets neglected. Again, so many visitors just think it's all about Shiloh, and I'm not saying Shiloh's not super important, but you know, this is an important region too. And I'm real proud of those exhibits. We did those at every welcome center in the state. I go by and check them whenever I'm coming in that direction, and there's there. And one thing that is real interesting to me, I always ask the staff, okay, what have people been saying? Good things, bad things, what are you hearing? No one says anything bad. Everyone says, well, this is interesting, and no other state does this. And I thought, good, because I do think that these are good exhibits. They're inclusive, they tell the whole story, as we always say we want to do. And if you haven't been out to that, you know, one time you're coming back into Dyer County from the west, stop at the Welcome Center. It's really a nice little exhibit. And again, we could focus on destinations, and we had Fort Pillow, the Confederate Monument at Union City, which is listed in the National Register, the Battle of Island number 10, and then you can see the Dyersburg Square. I wasn't about to leave Dyersburg out after all of the work we had done. So then, this is when I got to the other school. Was also in 2014 when I met Larry Williams there. He wanted me to look at it, he wanted to show me a museum, and he wanted me to think about how we could support that. So we went to the school, we saw the historic photos of what it was like in the 1950s. It was built in 1952. And we also looked at their heritage room and the wonderful gym. And we said right then, we think this building should be in the National Register of Historic Places too. But it's gonna be a hard slog because there's been changes here. They've lost some classrooms. They still have the gym. They still have some classrooms, but particularly they still have the gym, which was such a centerpiece for the community and for the history of sports in Dyer County. So we worked on that exhibit for a long time. If you haven't been to the Bruce High School Heritage Room, it's really well done. They have it set up as if you could take a class there, but then on top of every desk, they have different historic photos that tell stories. They tell stories of alumni, they tell stories of the students and classes, they tell stories of the teachers. They take particularly pride, as they should, because both schools, both Dyersburg High School and Bruce High School, really have important sports and music legacies. And they have some just great photos of different gatherings there. I love the basketball photo here because, again, I know people don't get it from other parts of the country, but we all know in our towns, football and basketball season used to rule. I know we have all these other sports now, and that's great. But when I was growing up, there was 2 seasons. There was football season and basketball season. And, they were always community events. But music was important too. And that's a big legacy that both high schools share. And Bruce High School really had some great historic photos of their student athletes and student musicians. But then here is one from the science lab. And I just love the kid on the right-hand side. You can see how excited she was to be in that picture. And I thought, well, I can sort of identify with that. That would have been me if I'd been sitting there. I would have been, oh God, I have to be in this picture. Are you kidding me? I hate science, So, I like the honesty of it. And again, LaLonda Harris is here tonight. She worked with us to get the nomination done. It's a tome if you really want to read a long historical narrative, because we were afraid the State Historical Commission would say no. That, the building had been changed and some classrooms had been torn down. And we were afraid they would deny the application. So we sort of maybe overproved the point of how historically important Bruce High School had been to Dyersburg and Dyer County. But, that's now all a permanent record and is listed in the National Register. As we were wrapping that up, 30 years after I went to it the first time, in early 2023, Mayor Mabry, there in New Bern, said, come and look at the depot. We've got some questions, We know you did the nomination. No one remembers who you are, but if you're still working, could you come and look at it and, just give us some guidance on some preservation steps we needed to take. So I thoroughly enjoyed that because what a great job they have done with this station. I mean, depots are something I'm always interested in. I mean, look at that floor. It's just spotless. And I can remember, the condition of this building when it was being nominated. It wasn't a wreck, but it didn't look like this. And, what a great statement that they made here in New Bern, and what a centerpiece this is. And particularly the old baggage area, freight area, where, that can be used for everything. And I love it that the scale is still there. They had so many pieces of that building still there. They were lucky that some things hadn't been torn out. And of course, so many of these depots in Tennessee had been torn down. So, the New Bern Depot is always one of my favorite projects. So, what have I been doing more recently? Well, it's the Robert Moody marker. And Danny and I talked about this before the meeting. There was a meeting of the Tennessee Historical Commission in the spring in Collierville. And I'm ex officio on the commission as the Tennessee State Historian. I attend the meetings when I can. And the commission first rejected the application. They didn't think that he was important. And I do like I'm known to do. I raise my hand, I get acknowledged, and I said, I will be happy to look at the Robert Moody story and do a revision and send it back to every member of the commission. Now, it took me just about a day to do that. He's well known, well documented, and important. And in fact, I showed them photos. This is the photo from Eureka Christian Church, which has an exhibit about it. He's just a fascinating character, And as I ended up telling the commission, he doesn't even deserve, he not only does he deserve this marker, he deserved a book. I really want to get up to the Eureka College archives and see this manuscript that one of the professors there had started to write about him. He published some of it in a local newspaper. Well, is the whole manuscript there? Because it was based on interviews he had done with Moody, back in the day. And they have a good archives there. It is where, President Reagan went to college. So they have the Reagan presidential, sort of center there. So, when I have time, I want to get up to Eureka College and look at the Moody archives. So this is now back before the commission, and I know Earl Willoughby has read the revision, and Danny's read the revision. I think the three of us are good with it. And the commission members who had objections have withdrawn their objections. So at their next meeting in October, which I'm going to be able to attend, it's up in Rocky Mount in Upper East Tennessee. This should get through, and I'll keep you in touch on how that goes. I don't anticipate any more issues with this marker. But again, thanks to you guys for sharing the story, because I didn't know the story until I saw the marker submission, and I thought, well, this is interesting. And then I had the chance to go deeper into it, and yeah, what an interesting individual. So, with all of that said, congratulations on your 200th anniversary. You guys have a great month in October and November, and just have a great celebration because you deserve it. I think this is a very important West Tennessee city. I've been honored to work with it, work with you guys, learn from it, and admire what you guys have done. So again, kudos to you, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Questions? Additions, comments? Yes, sir. Travis?
The depot in New Bern is the only building that has been put on the National Registry in New Bern. Did they request some other buildings like the old high school
Well, to me,
building?
the old high school is a logical one. I would even say they could have a historic district of some of those old brick buildings right around the depot.
Yeah.
I would think that's real possible. Now, the Tennessee Historical Commission has added a new staff person that can help you on this. Her name is Lane Tilner. And Lane studied under me, so she knows how to do this work. And she's from Collierville. So unlike, a lot of other people, she actually knows where Dyersburg is. And she is their West Tennessee local government person. So, if New Bern wants to move forth on other buildings, Lane is in a good position to help you guys. Other questions?
You say her name again, Lane?
Lane Tilner, Tillner.
Elise?
Is it hard to get homes on the historical register?
It used to be easier, let me put it that way. We've done individual properties for my 30, I started my 39th year at MTSU in July. So that was the first things we did. We've done individual properties, we've done individual farms, churches, schools. In Dyersburg, it was the interest in doing districts, and that reflected what they wanted to do. Again, if you have a property in town that you think would be a potential qualifier, Lane Tilner is going to be the person to talk to. But yes, I think it's important. If a property owner qualifies for the National Register, the state should help you. If the state doesn't, this is where the Center for Historic Preservation steps in. Because with the case of Bruce High School, the state wasn't helping much at all. And once we looked into the history of it, we knew Bruce was eligible. Just like this building here would be when you guys are ready for it.
Can you just call, where do you call? Say,
Ask for Lane at the Tennessee Historical Commission. And I don't know their phone number, but they, you know, it's gonna be, actually, I don't have anything to write on.
Right there, the whiteboard, right there.
Where is something to write on?
It's right there.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, you know, you get old and you can't see anymore. And if it's not Olivia, it's Lane. You know, I know those state addresses often use their first name, and she's Olivia Lane. So it would be it's either Lane or Olivia, period, Tillner at tn.gov.
And I've got the number of the Tennessee Historic Commission too, because we're dealing with those folks on these markers we're doing for the bicentennial.
Now, I just can't remember the number right now.
Yes, ma'am.
What are some of the qualifications that must be met for, say, a home?
Well, you know, often with the home, they look at the architecture of it, architectural significance. And then they look at family history, family contributions to the community. But typically with homes, they look at architecture first.
should it look at age?
Well, yeah, typically they want these to be at least 50 years old.
I thought it was 100.
No, it's 50. If it's 100 years old, that's better. But 50 is their sort of where they start. So now that's sort of, you know, I think about, you mean all of those ranch houses in Murfreesboro built in the 60s are now eligible for the National Register? By their age, they are, and that's just sort of jarring to me. It's like, no, it can't be.
You wanna write the number down?
I don't know that number,
I
sir.
got it.
Oh, okay.
615 741 2764 Tennessee Historical Society.
There you go. And again, you could just ask for Lane.
Other questions?
Thank you, sir.
Just a comment, our swimming pool over on, Lake Road, looks to me like it might qualify, and I'll just take a look at it, been there a long time, it's pretty
Was
original.
it built by the New Deal?
I'm not sure, it might have been, that was New Deal, somebody knows. What? The swimming pool.
WPA.
Yeah, see, they did a lot of those.
Which
I
one?
have not nominated a
Oh,
Tennessee
yeah.
swimming pool to the National Register, but I have in Montana.
And
It was
the
hanging
Historical
up.
Society has the original drawings of that pool,
Yeah, that's
building
cool.
and everything.
Yeah, it's probably eligible. Again, I mean, they hired her to do, you know, to have someone for West Tennessee, so that's, I'm not trying to give Lane everything to do, but she is your person.
Well, these mechanical drawings that Tracy's talking about, we have those thanks to him. Because when City Hall was moving from the corner down there on the corner of the square, these drawings were laying there, and he was, I guess you were working as the realtor for the building? And he brought them to us, and we have the drawings, mechanical drawings now, for the Roellen High School when it was built, and that building's gone.
Yeah.
We have the drawings for Robert Chevrolet, which is now Simmons Bank down here. And we have the original drawings, mechanical drawings, for what is called the Okina Bathhouse, which is the pool building out there. And those are pretty cool, and they would add a lot to anybody's application for something like that. And I'll just tell you that I've talked to the mayor about this building, and it is on our list of things to do one of these days when we find time, because this building probably would qualify for the things that historically that have happened here, because it was built by the WPA just like that pool house out there. It was built in 1939, and there's a lot of history here with this facility. Not to mention, this is the 4th high school building on this site. This is not the 1st or 2nd, it's the 4th. And a lot of other things happened here. Anyway, I tell you all that because I've told the mayor that we wouldn't dare start to apply for this without talking to him first, because this belongs to the city. And at some point, this probably does need to be listed as well. We've done some renovations, as you know, there's some walls been taken out and some things changed, but I'm pleased to let you know that he's very eager to see us pursue maintaining this building, because you're sitting in our old high school library and it's pretty comfortable in here. And it's because work has happened over the years to make sure that we have central heat and air and nice chairs and carpet and video projectors and all that. There's a lot available here that normally wouldn't be in a facility like this. So Dyersburg's lucky enough to have elected leaders to maintain and help us do this. At the same time, the museum is in here rent-free. You know, all these exhibits down through here, and we had an arts council meeting here last night. We had a bicentennial meeting here yesterday. We had a board meeting just about, an hour ago. And we have people like Dr. West, who does this for a living and travels the whole country doing it, supporting what we do. And the one thing I like about what he's told us today is how these places, these people, these names came rolling off his tongue because he didn't have to look them up. He knows these places. Did anybody see Edward Burks? Now, Edward's not here today, but Edward is our treasurer, and Edward's house was on this presentation. Did y'all see that? He bought another house somewhere he's fixing to move, but that latter house, is pretty interesting too. I love to tell this story. I think it's funny because years ago we had a meeting in here for the YMCA. And some gentleman came here to do a presentation to the staff of the YMCA, because they're in the basement. That's what they're doing down there. And he came in here about lunchtime and started his presentation. He said, I just drove around Dyersburg and I just enjoyed looking at all the different places around there. And said, I came down that road, it's got that boulevard in the middle of it. And so there's a sign over there and it says, a lot of woods. Okay? And he said, there are a lot of woods back there. And of course, we know it as Latta Woods. And that's where Molly lives today. That's kind of neat. Other questions?
Dr. West, you had a picture of Tabernacle Baptist
Yeah.
Church. They are interested at some point in putting it on the registry. I've spoken with the ministry that is now in that building.
Well, have them get in touch with me. I have a real soft place for churches. Churches and schools.
You mentioned the Methodist Church, is that on the
No,
register?
the state would not let us extend the boundaries of that downtown district to the church. It was like, but that's a church that's in the residential part. And it was like, that wasn't worth the battle in 1991. Because, that building is clearly a landmark. It's clearly well kept. It's got a historical marker,
And in the original plat of the town, McGoy, which is where First Methodist is, was the northern boundary of the town.
Right.
Gives you a whole new perspective of downtown Dyersburg, doesn't it? Yeah. What?
The east one was just right. It
Yeah.
didn't go very far that way either.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Well, guys, thank you so much.
Thank y'all. Let's give him another big round of applause.